Good morning, seeds. The tomatoes graduated to the top shelf because, as you can see, they've just gotten insane. Hopefully these guys transplant well. Likewise, the onions are definitely growing really well. Just gave them a good drink, but wow. Not all of our tomatoes are going well. These yellow plum tomatoes, for some reason, are really struggling. I'll probably do another sowing of these because they're dropping quite a few leaves. The ones at the back are a different variety and they're doing quite well. Our 8-week flowers, herbs, and tomatoes are all doing really well. They're still nice and small, so they don't need a transplant quite yet. But pretty excited that most germinated. These guys will probably require a pot fairly soon because they are starting to get their second leaves in. These couple cells are just a few tomatoes that only required an 8-week germination, as opposed to the ones above, which said an 8 to 12-week germination. But to be honest, I think the ones above I probably could have waited as well. The brassica family tray is doing pretty well as well. There's definitely some true leaves coming in on the cabbages. Now, I did notice my cauliflower, these are second year seed. They didn't have the greatest germination rate, and some of them kind of look a little worse for wear. So I'm not sure if the success of them kind of teeters off, but I've noticed that's a little bit different for this year. The broccoli and the Brussels sprouts are doing fairly well, slightly leggy, but not too bad. Now this tray has pretty much exploded. This is all of our greens that we are growing for indoor use, and we actually decided to try a couple of the ones that we had extras of outside. So right now they're getting a good drink because it's warmly raining here in Kingston. So we'll check on those later today. Now one thing you'll notice different is we added on these side shells because your girl planted way too many seedlings this year. We have another sowing of peppers here. So we have our jalapenos, our bell peppers, and a couple assorted hot ones. These are just those mixed packs you get, so I'm not really sure what they're going to be, but we are hoping to get a couple varieties we got last year. And then in the back here, I have two things that are more newly sowed. Coleus, or Claris, however you pronounce that, and Gonfrina. They haven't germinated yet. I definitely need to give them a drink because a couple of these cells are getting a little dry. Up here, we just have an assortment. I did another sowing of kale, just because I want kale in a bunch of places. My verbena, which are saved seeds, are going crazy. They're heavily planted because I cold stratified them, and I guess I mixed in a lot more seeds than I had anticipated. I also have just a couple of zinnia varieties that said that they could be early germinated, so Salmon, State Fair, and the candy cane varieties. I also have some slowly growing salvia back here, and then another sowing of rainbow shard. If you caught my last video, these are my Ranuculus. I'm really excited that most of them germinated. The only one that didn't was this guy here, so I pulled him out because he started to get a little bit of fuzziness on the top of his soil, so he kind of rotted out on me. But at the back, I have more of my Swiss chard. This one I thought was kind of leggy, which is why I grew the second sowing, but they're actually doing not too bad. I also sowed some peas. We did some outside in pots and then also some here indoors. Now peas don't really like being transplanted, but we did it last year and it definitely worked for us because we started in these bigger cups, so we didn't disturb the root system. These are the peppers that I had transplanted in our last update video, and they are doing so well. Everyone is so happy and green. We have our second sowing of onions back there. They're just hanging out because the onion tray up front didn't fit them. Over here too, we have our foxglove, we have our chamomile, and we have our pansies. These have gotten an up pot since you've last seen the updates, and they are growing insane. So pretty excited about these guys. They'll be able to be transplanted out fairly soon. We're about 6 weeks away from our last frost, and the foxglove can go out a couple weeks before, and then the pansies are also cold hardy. Not sure about the chamomile, I have to check in on them, but they are definitely going to be ready fairly soon. Down here we have our straw flower growing really well. They're nice and big. Probably could have held off on growing them so soon, but so far no root boundness, and then there's not a whole lot are dying. There's actually a couple more even popping up after the transplant, so that's pretty cool. We also have some herbs at the back that will be our indoor garden herbs. Shasta daisy are doing really well. Columbine are doing really well as well. We even have a bunch of new sprouts coming up. And then finally, we have more peppers, a random kale that made it down here, and more peppers. We also started these, which will be coming in a video for you guys soon, but this is our kitchen counter ledge kind of by our window, and we've transplanted a couple lettuces that we're going to be keeping indoors, and then as you can see we started some sweet potato slips. We also moved a couple herbs up top here, which we just have a regular light that kind of gives them enough light to grow. And then we do have some spinach that we wanted to keep indoors, and then a few houseplants and green onions. So as mentioned, we did move a couple of our greeneries out. They are nice and wet because we are currently getting a rain here in Kingston. These guys are a little bit of a softer lettuce, and they're kind of wilted a little bit because it did get pretty cold last night. But the kales and everything are doing pretty well, so I'm excited for this experiment. Thankfully, everything is melting. We have a little bit of ice, a couple of trenches to get the water out of our garden. But everything is looking pretty good. Looking forward to planting. This one here, our cold frame, we left open so we could thaw out some of the soil and get a good drink. But we will be planting hopefully soon into these beds. Thanks for joining.